Okay, so today we're going to learn about the scanner class. So let's go ahead and make ourselves a class in a new Java file. So public class, and I'm going to call this one user input because we're going to use the scanner class in Java in order to collect some information from our user of our program. So open brace and close brace, and then we'll need a main method just like always. So public public static void main, and then string open close brace args, and then we're going to need our open close brace for the main method. Okay, so in order to collect user input, you need the scanner class from the Java library. And we're going to bring that in as an import because it doesn't automatically come when we execute a Java file the way that the string class does, for example, or the math class. The scanner class is something that you only use in a program where you need it. So Java wants us to import those methods from the class explicitly at the beginning of the program. So up above our class statement, at the very top line, we're going to import, and you can tell import is a keyword because it turned purple when we typed it. So we're going to import, and then Java is the library, utilities, so UTIL, right? And then in that utilities package, we want the scanner class. Okay, and we're going to end that with a semicolon because it's an executable line of code. Okay, so before we start looking at the functions or methods that we can pull from that scanner class, I want to show you how to look up information when you're trying something new in Java. So if you go to Google, you can do a Google search on the import that we just did. So Java, utilities, scanner, and then in computer science language, we say API, and API stands for Application Programming Interface. And that's going to bring up in our search the official documentation for the Java package from Oracle. So if we look in our search results here, remember last time we talked about the differences in the different versions of Java, right? JGrasp here at Carlisle High School, we're running Java 8, version 8, and that's what is used on the AP exam, right? But here's a link for the documentation for version 17. Remember the current version, I think, is 22 at the time that I'm recording this, so just be aware that the program functions or methods often behave differently in different versions of Java. So you want to be careful when you're looking up documentation that you're looking for the version that you're going to be using when you're coding. Okay, so this is what the API looks like from Oracle for version 8 for the scanner class. And it's going to tell us just some general information. It'll give us some examples, right? It tells us here that the scanner can parse primitive types and strings. Remember last time we learned about data types. Primitive data types are numeric data types. Strings are a type of object data type. Okay, so we're going to be able to scan in user data in numeric or string data types. Okay, don't worry about this vocabulary about tokens and delimiters. That's not necessary for the level that we're in. But we can see down here this example, the code is allowing the user to read a number from system.in. We did system.out in our last programs to display information to the user. System.in is going to collect information from the user, right? So when we look at this example code, scanner is the class. Okay, so we're going to begin with the class name. Remember, classes always start with a capital letter. Then we're going to have an identifier for that class. Now, I'm not wild about this example identifier. They're using SC here. And I usually will use an identifier that describes where the input is coming from. So I'll use keyboard, right, if they're going to type in their input in the keyboard. I would think that would be a more descriptive identifier than SC. Okay, then the new keyword here is going to indicate that we're instantiating or creating a new object in the scanner class. And that's going to make a lot more sense when we get to Unit 2 on objects. For now, just remember that you're going to need the new keyword the first time that you create this scanner object. Okay, then the class name again, and then system.in is going to be in the parentheses and a semicolon at the end of that line. Okay, then next we have a variable identifier I and its data type. So this variable I is going to hold an integer. Okay, again, we try to avoid single letter variable types. We want to use descriptive variables so that we know what is being held in that variable. Okay, and we're going to set that equal to SC. SC, remember, is the identifier for the scanner object. So we're invoking that object. Dot next int, and next int is a method from the scanner class that collects an integer that the user inputs into the keyboard. Okay, so let's go ahead and scroll down just a little bit here to where the methods are. Okay, so here are some constructors, and here's our method summarizer, or summary. So we can see here some of the methods, and there are a lot of them, right? Look at all of the different methods we can call on this scanner class. Okay, so when I look for the one that we just used, it was next int. Right, here's the next int method in the API, and it tells me that that's going to scan the next token of the input as an integer. Right, there are versions of this next function for lots of data types. We can have the user scan in next line, right, and that's going to advance the scanner past the current line and return the input. Right, that was skipped. We have next double, that's going to scan in a decimal data type. Next Boolean, right, that's going to scan in a true or false indicator. Just plain old next, right, there's our next, that catches a string. It finds and returns the next complete token, in this instance a string from the scanner. So we have lots of different methods here. I mean, look at all these methods that just go on and on that we can invoke by calling them from this scanner class. Okay, so that's what the API looks like. So we're gonna, in this main method, we're gonna create a scanner object that captures keyboard data. So I'm gonna, oops, why is it not typing here? There we go. So I'm gonna start with the class name, scanner, and then I'm going to give it an identifier, this object, and I want it to describe where that input is coming from. So I'm going to make my scanner object called keyboard. And keyboard, you can see it isn't turning colors, so that's a valid identifier. Okay, if it changed, like if it was, a keyword or a reserved word in Java, it would change color. So I can use keyboard as my identifier. Then I need that keyword new to instantiate this new object. And then the class name scanner and system.in, and then a semicolon. Okay, now we're going to create a variable. So let's do a data type int. And I'm going to have that variable hold, let's see, we'll say num cats. Okay? So the number of cats that the user has. And I'm going to collect that data from the user by assigning my object, keyboard, is my scanner object, and I'm going to assign to that, or call from that, the method next int. Okay. Now, to know if this is working or not, I'm going to need some output so that I can verify that it's working. So let's just do a system.out.println, and we'll output the number of cats that the user enters. Okay, so if I didn't make any typos in here, we should be able to compile. But if you notice down here, right, I've got my file is not saved yet with a name that matches the name of the class. So it's not going to compile until it saves. JGrasp, when I hit compile, is going to prompt me to save that file because the command to compile requires a named file. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up and save it. Okay, and now I should be able to compile and run. So my operation is complete. That means I don't have any compile time errors in my code. Now we'll run it. Okay, and we can see down here in the console, there's a blinking cursor to receive the user's input. So in my house, I have 1 cat. So I'm going to type 1 on the keyboard and then press enter. And notice that it output the 1 that I entered. Okay, so I collected some user input. Now, it's not intuitive for users who didn't write this code to know what they're supposed to type at that blinking cursor. So generally, when we're collecting user input with the scanner class, we include a prompt that outputs to tell the user what we want from them. So I'm going to go back up here to the line before I collect their input, and I'm going to do a system.out.print. Now, if I did, say I did print line, and I say enter number of cats in your house. Okay, that's my string literal, right, inside of the quotation marks. And that print line would, it would output onto the console, that full line, but it would return the cursor to the next line. So then that blinking cursor would be under my prompt. If I want the cursor to blink right at the end of the prompt, but on the same line, I'm gonna, instead of the print line function, I'm going to use just print, because print is going to keep the cursor on the same line. Okay, so let's go ahead and run. And there's my prompt to enter the number of cats in the house. Let's say I had 4 cats in my house. I type a 4 and press enter, and then there's my output. Asked it to print the number of cats. Okay, so now maybe I want to collect some decimal data in my program. So let's this time have them enter the price of a can of cat food. Okay, prices are decimal numbers. So instead of an integer, I'm going to capture some decimal data. So I'm going to store that information that the user types in as a double, because that's a decimal value. And then we'll say food price. Okay, and remember, for your variable identifiers, they have to or should start with a lowercase letter, a $sign, or an underscore. They have to. And then you can use camel case, like I did here, where the second word first letter is capitalized, or I could put an underscore there, right, and have it be food price. I just can't have a space in my variable identifier or variable name. So double food price, and now since we're inputting a double, we're going to use the method next double, right, from the scanner class. And then we can output the food price. Okay, and now we'll go ahead and let that compile and run. Okay, so here's my prompt. Enter the number of cats in your house. This time we'll say I have 2 cats. Enter the price of a can of cat food. So let's say a can of cat food is $2.25. And there's my double output, just like I expected. Okay, we could do some calculations with our food price and our number of cats. So let's say we wanted to make a variable identifier for the cost to feed. Okay, so cost to feed is going to be the product of the number of cats times the food price. Okay, now I haven't yet assigned a data type to my cost to feed variable. And remember, you can assign the value and declare the data type on the same line, or you can do that on another line, the declaration. So I could say double cost, underscore there, cost to feed, right? And I can declare that data type as a double on its own line, and then on line 15 assign its value, right? Or I could, like I did with the integers, I could declare and assign at the same time on the same line, right? Doesn't matter, it'll work either way. Okay, then I can output, so system.out.println, and let's do some meaningful output. So we'll tell the user in a string literal, it will cost. Okay, then I'm going to have a space. I'm going to close my string literal. Well, actually, I think I want a $sign there first. So I'm going to have it cost with a $sign. Okay, then I'm going to close my string literal, and I'm going to concatenate. Remember, concatenate means link together with the plus operator here. So my string will concatenate with my variable cost to feed. And then I'm going to do another plus sign to concatenate, and then I'm going to open a new string literal. Now, cost to feed, the cursor will be right at the last decimal or value in my double, my decimal number. So I'm going to need a space in my string literal so that it's readable. And then I'll say to feed your cats for 1 day, assuming that they eat a can of cat food each. Okay, so remember, a plus sign when you have string literals first is going to behave as concatenation. Okay. So we'll go ahead and compile and run. Okay, so let's say we have 2 cats, and the price of cat food is $2.72. Right? It will cost $5.44 to feed our cats for one day. Okay, now let's run again. And this time, let's say we have 2 cats, and the price of a can of cat food is $2.50. Okay, notice now my double, because it's got only one decimal place, right, $5, but it's a double, so it always will display at least one decimal place in its output, but that's not the format that we will usually use for money, right? We need 2 decimal places when we're formatting for money. Okay, so in order to do that formatting, remember we used printf for print format. And print format works inside of a string literal. So we're going to go ahead and move this variable, this cost to feed, outside of the string literal. So we'll have a comma, and we'll just tack that on then at the end. Get rid of those parentheses. Okay, so now we have one string literal. It will cost $sign to feed your cats for one day. Cost to feed is the variable that we want to format inside of that string literal. So it's separated from the string literal by a comma. And to trigger the formatting, we use the %sign. Okay, then we enter how many decimal places we want. So money is 2 decimal places. So we'll have a decimal with a 2 to indicate we're going to add 2 decimal places to the integer value of the double. And then we need to say what data type we're formatting, and we're going to use F for a floating point number. That's a decimal number. Okay, and then if I'm remembering correctly, that should format our cost to feed double to 2 decimal places and insert it here inside of our string literal. So let's go ahead and compile and run. So again, we have 2 cats in the house, and the price of a can of cat food we said was $2.50. And now we can see our output, it will cost $5, right? There's our 2 decimal places we wanted in formatting to feed your cats for one day. Okay, now let's personalize this a little bit by asking our user to tell us their name. So I'm going to go ahead and copy these 2 lines so I don't have to retype everything. And this time my prompt is going to say to enter your first name. Okay, and since a name is going to be letter characters, right, I'm going to change int here to be a string data type, and we'll call this one first name. And then to capture the string, the next string that's in the line, okay, then we're going to use, instead of next int, just next. So the next method in the scanner class is going to bring in a string. So let's go ahead and in our output, we're going to start this sentence by saying first name. So in front of our string literal, oops, lowercase. So first underscore name. And then we'll concatenate that string. And then for formatting purposes, let's make this a comma and a lowercase I. So we should have the first name and then the rest of our output. So we'll go ahead and run. Okay, so now we're going to enter first name, and then number of cats in your house, price price of cat food, and here we see Robin, it will cost $5 to feed your cats for one day. So we've captured a string, an int, and a double so far. Okay, now what will happen if I run, and maybe I didn't notice enter your first name, and I just typed in my entire name. Okay, notice that it throws an error when the user does that because we were anticipating with the keyword next just one string, right? And the user violated that instruction and put in two strings. So when we want to capture an entire line of text in our string, instead of the keyword next, which grabs one string, we're going to use next line. Okay, so let's go ahead and try that again. Okay, so enter your first name. I accidentally enter my full name, and now it accepts it because the next line function or method is going to capture the entire line. Now let's look at what happens when I enter my number of cats as 2, my 2 printed out underneath, then I enter the price of a can of cat food as $2.50, and there's my statement. It will cost $5 to feed your cats for one day. Okay, so one more thing that we want to look at. In this example, we looked to capture the string before we captured the numeric data types. Let's rearrange this a little bit. So let's move our string capture to after the integer. Okay, so first we're going to capture the number of cats, then the name, okay, and we don't need this anymore. We know that that's working. Okay, and we don't need this line anymore because we know that that's working. Okay, so we'll just clean this up a little bit so we can see what we're capturing. So first we're going to get the number of cats as an int, then the first name saved as a string, and we'll just do first name. It'll be the next method because it'll just be one string, and then the double for the cost. So let's go ahead and run that. Okay, so number of cats in my house is 2. First name is Robin. Price of a can of food is $2.50. And that looked like it was processing just the way we wanted it to. Okay, now let's try that with a next line. Okay, so 2 cats, and look at the difference. So let me scroll this up here, and we'll compare these two. So when we ran it last time, when we just had next as our method, capturing one string in the first name, to a next line which captures the entire string, multiple words in the same line. Okay. So when we had just the next method, it worked as we intended it to, capturing the one string and then the following prompt. But this time, using the next line method, right, we input the number of cats in the house, and then notice the prompt showed up to enter the first name, but then it didn't give us a place to enter the first name, and it just went ahead and displayed the prompt for the price of a can of cat food. And in Java, this problem is known as the input anomaly. It's one of the reasons that coders don't generally like the scanner class because they always have to be mindful of this situation where the input anomaly kind of messes up what your intentions were. So let's think about what is actually happening here. The next method, when we just had next as our method call, that looks for a string, right? And it captures just that one string. So as long as the user inputs one string, it's captured by the scanner and stored as the variable, and it's fine. Okay, now the next int method, okay, in line 11 here, so next int, that captures just the integer that the user entered. So when they type in the number 2, in order to get that integer captured by the scanner, the user has to press enter, right, in order to trigger the fact that it's been entered. But that enter keystroke counts as white space. It's sort of, if you think of it, it's almost like a string. It counts as a space. And that white space, when they pressed enter, is getting captured by the next line as an input. So what's stored in that variable first name is the enter command that was used after the user typed the number 2. And that's not what our intention was. Our intention was that the user would first type in their name and press enter, and that would be the thing that was captured. Okay, so to counteract the fact that there's an enter press that is being stored in this first name location, what we have to do when we go from a primitive data type retrieval, so next int, next double, anything like that, to a next line call, is we're gonna add in, without assigning it to anything, because we don't need to store that enter press, but we do need to capture it. So we're gonna do keyboard next line, and it's going to, so when they press 2 and enter, the 2 will get stored as numcats. The enter will get captured or read in by this command on line 13, keyboard dot next line, so that the prompt for the next data capture for the first name is going to actually be what the user types in. Okay? And then at the end of that line, they press enter, and then it can go right into our double retrieval. So let's go ahead and compile and run. Okay, so we have 2 cats in our household, and now notice I can type in my name and the price of the cat food, and things work as intended. Okay, so just be mindful of that input anomaly when you're using the scanner class. If you're ever going to change from a primitive data type, right, where we were capturing an int, to a string data type with next line, okay, it won't happen, that anomaly won't happen with .next as long as they enter just one string. But if it's capturing that whole line, we run into that input anomaly, and you're going to need to do keyboard.nextLine in order to capture that enter, the white space, so that things work as you intend them to.